and the chief leader writer at The Observer, Sonia Sodha. Welcome back to both of you. Lots of coverage about the funeral today of the burglar who lost his life.
Yes, there seem to have been some extraordinarily dramatic scenes at the funeral procession, which was incredibly ostentatious. Look at these pictures of the van covered in flowers and decorations, and some really quite unpleasant scenes of violence. I was very struck by a quote from an LBC reporter who was at the scene, who said that in 10 years of reporting, he'd never felt so threatened. He'd been pelted by eggs, there'd been things chucked around, and it was really a very unpleasant atmosphere. And I think tensions are still running incredibly high over this story. This was a culmination of weeks of very ill feeling in the community over what had happened with this burglar who lost his life when the pensioner whose house he broke into turned on him. So I imagine for the community now, they hope that this is the end of it and it will draw a line under it. But I do think that the family of the deceased unnecessarily wound everybody up with that very, very over-the-top display at the funeral.
Yeah, I mean, obviously his family are free to grieve and mourn him and have a funeral for him in the style that they wish. It's completely up to them. But there were reports, for example, that one of the mourners was carrying a catapult, and, you know, things did get very, very nasty with the police. And, you know, it's obviously just not a very nice situation for anyone involved, including the locals who've had to put up with. In the wake of his death, there were lots of kind of disturbances around wreaths and tributes that were put up to the burglar who lost his life outside the home of the pensioner who was burgled. And that brought a lot of kind of unrest and unease to the area. And it almost felt, you know, I think some local people were saying it felt like people were coming in from outside the local area to partake. So you've got to kind of just hope that this really calms down now.
Let's move on to a story in the Daily Express. Now, local elections, counts are being verified or even counted by now, one might imagine. I don't suppose the idea of a council tax hike plan was part of Labour's local elections.
Just say this is a massive exaggeration in the Express headline of what McDonnell
Surely
said.
not in the Express.
What John McDonnell actually said is there's often Tory councillors saying they're freezing, you know, council tax on council tax. People are telling us on the doorstep, I'd rather pay a bit more to get a decent service. Now, that is not John McDonnell saying there's going to be massive council tax hike plans. I think he's probably just reflecting what's common sense. Councils have seen massive budget cuts from the government over the last kind of 7 to 8 years. We know services like social care, care for people's older relatives are really taking a hit. And quite frankly, if you're not going to get this money from the government, councils have got to find the funds somewhere. So,
well, I'm really glad, Sonia, that it's after 10 o'clock and the polls have closed, because that was a right party political broadcast from you.
She's allowed.
It's not party political.
I think that was a reasonable interpretation of John McDonnell's words, that Labour would at least be open to significant council tax rises. And from what you say, maybe that's a reasonable vote.
Well, they pick up potholes, don't they? You can't just throw a bit of tarmac over a pothole.
That is the thing that got me excited.
It's got to be repaired properly, and it's true. We all care about potholes.
The potholes are out of control in our area, and people do care about that thing.
Yeah. I've been fed
up with trashing my car.
Just as you know, 6 times.
Yeah, it's not good.
Just very quickly as well, elections, where should we look out for? Obviously, we've got a special programme starting at midnight.
So Westminster is obviously a key one. There's a lot of anxiety in the Tory party about whether or not they'll hold on to that. It will be extremely bad news for Theresa May if that one goes.
I think other areas to look out for will be areas where UKIP has previously been strong, because they're not forecast to do that well. And, you know, have a look at where their votes are going. Are they going to the Conservatives? Are they going to Labour? That will be interesting.
OK. In the meantime, everyone cares about the weather as well. Don't forget special programme at midnight. She says, getting over that one. But to the weather, bank holiday set for a new high for heat. 25 degrees, not that hot, but anyway, better than the 23 point something.
I saw one that said 27.
27.
Oh, 27.
Yeah, we were quite. It depends where you are. So you've got 24 in Wales. You know, it depends where you are.
Yeah, I'm off to North Wales. It's not going to be 27.
Yeah, I'm off to the Midlands. Not quite so good either.
We were just cheered up by this prospect. That's all.
Absolutely, and so should we all be if you're in the right place. We'll see you at 11:30. Thank you both very much indeed. Sonia and Isabel will be back then. Let's check out now the weather as we head to the bank holiday weekend.